This is Mitch, and welcome to the 1000houses.com podcast. I'm here with Johnny Merritt. He's up in the Panhandle, a little place called Dimmitt, and he saw me with my cowboy hat on. I says, well, I'm going to take it off. And he says, no, let me get my cowboy hat. So he went and got his cowboy hat. I said, well, I'm going to take mine off then. I'm going to wear my hat too. So here we are.
There you
go. He came by his cowboy hat probably a little more honest than I did. I kind of worked my way up to mine. He was born in a cowboy hat. So
that's true. That's absolutely true.
All transparency here. I bought a ranch about 5 years ago and decided I like that lifestyle. Of course, I'm from Texas, and we're no stranger to hats, but it took me a little while to grow into one. But I like it now. Now you have to fight me if you want to take it off me. So.
Hey, Mitch, what my dad always said, that if somebody spits on you or knocks off your hat, it's time to fight. So you got the right attitude there, pal. Way to go.
I've seen that before. I've seen a man get his hat knocked off, and I've seen some teeth fly. You don't knock a man's hat off his head. You just don't do that.
Well done.
So give us a little background. You're a real estate attorney and a corporate attorney. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you're at, and give us the bullet points, and then we're going to go down this pathway and see where it leads us.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for letting me be on your podcast. I'm just thrilled. Very impressive. There's 425 published podcasts, 3 books. Very impressive what you have accomplished, Mitch, and thank you for having me. Let me correct a little something that you said. I did grow up in a little town of Dimmitt, grew up on a farm and ranch, and then became an attorney, practiced law in the Panhandle for about 20 years. And now I have relocated in Austin. I live in Austin. When I graduated from law school, Mitch, the one thing that I was determined that I would not do is be a litigator. And in the late 1980s, that's exactly when the savings and loan crisis occurred. And so when I spoke to some law school classes, what I tell them typically is you end up doing what comes in the door. And surprisingly, the federal government hired a little law firm in Amarillo to handle the directors and officers liability cases all over the nation. And so I did that for 10 years, and then I just couldn't stand being a litigator. So for the last 20 years, I've focused on corporate law and real estate, and just love what I do, and have done that for the last 25 years.
Okay, so where'd you go to school at?
I'm a Red Raider through and through.
There you go. I should have expected, huh? So your real estate law side, what kind of stuff are you seeing? What do you handle? What's your business look like on the real estate side?
Well, I've done just about everything, Mitch. I mean, I was in the Panhandle, I did a lot of farm and ranch, both purchases and sales. We've done 1031 exchanges, of course, and we've done leases. I have done dairy purchases and sales. I've done feedlot purchases and sales. And then now that I'm in Austin, I've done a lot of residential development, and not much residential itself, but residential development work, commercial real estate. And so I've continued to learn a lot of things. So I've had an exciting career and want to keep learning and continue to do different things.
So that's, no truer words have been said, but real estate is just this huge bag, and it has so much in it that, you damn near have to even limit what you're going to do inside that bag, because there's just so much stuff. Do you specialize in any certain group of things?
Well, like I said, I don't do any real estate. I don't do any of the work where we're getting permits in Austin, any of the entitlement work. So most of my work is the clients bring me in at the beginning to determine what is the best structure for us to purchase this real estate. And then I will work on the contract to purchase it. So I've been lucky, Mitch, to be involved in most every aspect other than entitlement work. And I have no interest in doing entitlement work. Fortunately, there's attorneys that love to do that and are very good at it.
Can you explain entitlement work to me? So I'm a firm believer. Like if I don't understand something, I just raise my hand and go, I don't know what that means. I don't care how.
Well, and
but because no.
And Mitch, listen, I got to say the same thing. I'm not exactly sure what all it is, but let me tell you what I understand is when I first moved to Austin, there was about 160-acre tract of land that was just incredible, a very nicely located land that continued to just be agriculture land. It had the agriculture exemption. And some clients of mine found it. It's near where Apple is developing their new location. And so my clients were lucky enough to purchase that land, and we've hired an attorney that is helping them determine the steps that need to be taken to permit it for development, for multi-purpose development, multifamily locations, commercial locations, and that you got to have certain requirements for green areas, and you got to get the water to it, and it's all of those things that you have to work with municipalities and county governments to make sure that you properly develop the land.
Yeah. So that, and I wouldn't want to do a lot of that myself. That sounds like hard work.
Well, again, I feel thrilled again in looking at your website and seeing how much you've done for you to say that let me say this. I know that I have become an experienced attorney when sometimes I can say, I just don't know. And as a young attorney, you can't say that. But when you've been at it for 30 years, when a client calls, you can just say, I don't know. I can tell you're the same way in real estate. Well done.
Yeah. I try to specialize in what I do, but like you say, you always got to keep growing. So I get this question all the time, so I like to hear your opinion. What is the best entity to buy and sell real estate out of?
Well, certainly you should not do a C Corp, the traditional corporation, because you can't get capital gains treatment there. So that is just that's an absolute no. So you got to figure out a way. The greatest, newest, best is the limited liability corporations, and that's where most of my clients purchase their real estate is in LLC, because it does provide you the limited liability. It also provides an easy means of transferring percentage ownerships. But you don't have the personal liability that you would have with a general partnership. It's not as cumbersome as a limited partnership. So limited liability companies are really the best way to go. Is that what you hear most of your people
I learned
say?
the hard way. I had some property in a C Corp, and when I sold it, I got double taxed on it.
There you go.
And I had done almost everything else in LLCs, but that first time out, I just took an attorney's advice that really wasn't a real estate attorney, and I guess they weren't thinking that far. Wasn't a very good attorney.
Well, frankly, the first time I got to say, Mitch, the first time I heard it was a client that came to me and had a C Corp, and listen, I was a young attorney, and I learned from that experience. So that's how we learn is things like that.
Yeah, the subtitle of my first book, Failing Forward to Financial Freedom. I've fallen down so many times my nose should be flat.
I love that. Let me tell you, John, I don't know if you're familiar with John Maxwell, but John Maxwell is a great leadership teacher, and he has a book called Falling Forward. So I noticed that in your book. Love that. Love that.
So we're in Texas, and I buy things in a land trust, and my LLC is the beneficiary of the land trust. It just, the liability reasons to own the land trust went away a long time ago. It's not really for that. I think the best thing for liabilities to begin with, first and foremost, is just don't do crap to people you wouldn't want done to you. That's the first thing, and that'll keep you out of a lot of problems. Just treat people the way you'd like to be treated. I mean, if you buy a property and then you find out there's nuclear waste in the backyard, well, that's your problem. Don't try to sell it to someone else and not tell them. I mean, you gotta be straight. It'll save yourself a lot of problems.
I couldn't agree more. Mitch, one thing that I've learned as I've got older, used to we tried to negotiate great wins on every real estate transaction. And of course, we like to have wins. But frankly, what I've learned is when you can negotiate win-win situations for both the buyer and the seller, or the landlord and the tenant, listen, that's even better, because a win or a defeat might feel good for a short term, but it'll come back and bite you at some point. So I love what you just said.
It's almost as if you leave that gate open, the cow is going to come through it at some point in time. And it may be way down the road when you least need that cow to come through that gate, So you just keep all your gates closed and let everybody know, and just do it the right way.
Let me say this, Mitch. I think this is most appropriate for your listeners, because I do think what I have observed through the years is that's a hard lesson in real estate, and many people never learn it. There's this thought that you've got to win on every transaction, on every negotiation, and I think your listeners will be well served to think about, would it be better in the long term if perhaps I let this be a win-win situation. I think that's critically a very critical issue, and again, particularly in real estate.
So when we buy, I have a lot of private money. I have about $26 million in private money on the streets right now. I had to write a check to all of them about 3 days ago. But I borrow my money non-recourse, wrappable. They got a first lien position. I always buy with a title policy. And then, I have two rights every day. And this is what I tell my private lenders. I got two rights every day. If you make this loan on this house, now I'm only going to borrow a maximum of 65% of what I can sell or finance it for. But I only average borrowing 58%. I think part of the secret to my longevity and my success was that I never over leverage anything. And I just get what I need to get in the house. I don't start taking money out and sucking and running up my debt and all that up too close to what a property's worth. Matter of fact, I try to go the opposite way, and I police myself for over 2 decades, and it's still the same. And one of the things I don't do, though, when I sell my seller finance houses, we're not required to, I don't provide a title policy to my buyers. But I had a title policy when I bought it, and I know, and then they're being informed of the debt that, the wraparound debt, the debt that I'm carrying. They're informed of that in the wraparound mortgage documents, how much I owe, who I owe it to, and all that stuff.
Right.
But I'm very clear. If a title issue comes up that falls on my side of the line, I got to solve it. It's not their problem, and it's always been that way. And it doesn't happen very often. I still got an interest in that property. I still defend my title with my own title policy. We really know that title policies they're kind of like buying those warranty services for utilities. They got so many outs that it's really hard to get a title company to perform on any kind of thing. But that's not my buyer's problem if I have a problem. That's my problem.
Right.
And I got to go take care of it, and no matter what. So
well done.
What do you use land trust much? Are you familiar with land trust? Because I like to talk a little bit about them.
I really don't use land trust. I never have. We've just never been. Let me say this, Mitch. Another thing. Very early on, I had a client who really wanted to protect his family. Good old gentleman, had very great success, and he set up a bunch of trusts. And frankly, it sounded like it, and this was before I came on the scene, but I came on the scene about the time close to his death. And the trust created a lot of headaches that were unnecessary. And so I've got I probably shouldn't say this, but it's the truth. I've got a natural distrust of trusts, if you will, because I think that they can hamstring you if you're not careful.
So land trust is a little different than the traditional trust or living trust or any of that. It's a lot different. It's just a way of holding title. Mostly I do it for anonymity reasons, for ease of transfer, for the fact that I haven't been to a closing in 15 years. I mean, I got a trustee can go do my closings and sign the papers.
Understood.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
At the end of the day, I'm the bottom line of the whole thing. And like I said, it's not for asset protection reasons, other than it does allow for a certain amount of anonymity. Like, I don't like it when an attorney can type in my name and see that I got my name on 500 properties. I mean, I really don't like that.
Understood. Listen, I understood. I got you. Well, I need to study land trust more then. I just hadn't had a reason to look at them.
Yeah, well, and I make my own. They're just fill in the blank, and I don't have to charge a lot for them. But then a lot of title companies didn't want to use them. Banks don't understand them, and they can cause, it's just like asset protection. You can set up so much asset protection that you can't hardly move, and it costs a fortune at the end of the year. And the tracking of everything is so horrible that at some point you got to say, how about I just be a good guy and treat people right and not get into lawsuits? And then the number one thing, if I think I'm getting in a lawsuit, let's just settle now. My first lawsuit, don't even take it to court. What's the number? I might not even like it. You know what I mean?
Well, and Mitch, the one thing that God has a way of taking care of us, and my determination not to do litigation, and then that's the federal government walked in the door, and so that's what I did for 10 years. It was really good for me. Let me tell you, after 10 years of being a litigator, I couldn't agree more. My clients, I will avoid litigation as much as possible because, frankly, all litigation is, and forgive me, my litigator partners, but it's the truth. It's a transfer of wealth from the disputing party to the attorneys, and that's what it is. And so we need to try to get it. We try. I use mediation quite a bit for my clients, just to avoid even having disputes get to the litigators because it just gets too expensive. It's too slow. Well, again, I appreciate your comment.
So we were talking earlier, and I read kind of the notes before the show here, and you were talking about ways to navigate a market during crisis. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, yes. I mean, real estate has been very interesting. We've gone from a complete crash to a complete recovery. We've gone from, for some, not all, we've gone from people wanting to be in downtown urban areas to people wanting to be out in the country. And so it's been a very odd time. I will say this. I was talking to an appraiser the other day, and he was saying it's the first time ever he's seen both a seller's and a buyer's market at the same time. It's a seller's market because prices are up. It's a buyer's market because of interest rates. But what I'd say is on navigating is learn as much as you can. I mean, listen. I'll give you a plug. Listen to podcasts. Read everything you can get your hands on. Learn as much as you can. And then after you do that, stop and think. Sometimes we get so busy that we don't take the time to think about what we've learned. And one thing I regret perhaps of being on your podcast is I'm talking too much. You don't learn when you talk. You learn when you listen and when you read. The other thing I'd say that I had a client tell me the other day that I thought was really good advice. He said, "Stay in your lane. Now's the time to not to become. I think I'm going to get in this other market." He said, "I think it's important to stay in your lane." I want to hear your comment on that.
Well, it took me a long time to learn that because every shift in your strategy that you do, or if you move completely out of your strategy to another strategy, there's a whole nother learning curve. And, if you've been in a lane for a while, you're starting to have or you're either having everything that can happen to you, and you're learning from it in real time, or you're fortunate enough to be talking to people that are in that business because you're in that lane and they're telling you what happened to them. So then you can make note and make sure you safeguard against that or learn to recognize when that's coming down the pike, you know. So staying in your lane's a big one. Like, the grass always looks green on the other side. You go to the one seminar, you know, they make it sound so good. You know, the reason why I wrote this book was because I went to the seminar and I said, someone needs to write a book about what happens after the seminar, because they didn't tell me about all this other crap. No, they only told me about the big and the fancy cars and the boat. They didn't tell me about, you know, people stubbing their toe and putting a lawsuit on me because I had a rent property and my step was 1 inch higher than the other 3 steps, you know, and I wasn't to code. They didn't tell me about that.
I'd listen. That's great. I'm going to quote you on that. That's good stuff. The only other thing I would say that's a little bit inconsistent with that is, you know, times of crisis are great times of opportunity and creativity. I think that there were perhaps some young people that can think creatively, like some of us with more gray hair can't think about. And typically you have that experience curve that's very difficult to overcome. I think now's a time for perhaps some creativity. We're seeing a whole lot, you know, the video showing of land, the electronic showing of land, like we're doing this Zoom. It's a game changer, and it will never go back. And so I do think that there's opportunities here for some creative thinkers.
Somewhere out there's a whole bunch of books. I didn't invent the saying, but I took it as my own. I like to put it in my books when I have to autograph books. I say that laughingly because I don't know why in the world anybody would want my autograph, but it seems like if you write a book, they got to make you sign it, just because. I always put wealth comes from chaos. It's from an anonymous source, but absolutely, when I read that sentence, I looked back at, like, what am I doing? I said, there is a chaos. Some people would call the chaos that I delve in a lot of times, they would call it grave dancing. You know, like you're dancing on people's graves, people that had bad things happen to them. I said, well, I didn't cause the bad thing, and someone's going to get this property, whether it's me or someone else. I can't help that. You know, if I could find them before they made it or something and coach them, I would, but it's too late. It's already in foreclosure. It's already, whatever they did or whatever happened, someone's going to buy this house. So, and I look at the chaos, and I don't think anybody making any money isn't solving some kind of problem. There's got to be a problem or something to overcome. That's why they invent products to overcome some hardship or something people don't want to go through. So that's what we do.
Exactly.
One of my frustrations with the real estate business, but just attorneys in general, was and this is not a slam against attorneys. I'm just saying for the listeners out there, you know, I went to talk to people about seller financing homes, and they said it was illegal, and I said it's not illegal. It just wasn't in their area of expertise, or they didn't want to mess with it, or didn't want to look it up. And then, you know, there's a legal way to do it. They just assumed that I was wrapping, what's the word? I was wrapping pre-existing loans, like from Wells Fargo or something. I'm not doing a wrap without permission. I was doing a wrap with permission from my lenders. They know I'm going to wrap the note. It's in my loan agreement.
Right.
That's the whole basis of our relationship is they're going to loan me the money, and I'm going to owe them a payment, and then I'm going to sell that thing on a note, and I'm going to collect from them, but I don't have to pay my lender off. They make a payment to me, I make a payment to them. They don't make a payment to me.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Understood.
And there's people that, you know, I had a foreclosure attorney one time. That's all he did was foreclosures and evictions. And I thought, man, this guy, that's all he does. He must own a ton of properties. Me and my partner asked him one time, he said, so how many properties do you own, Robert? And he goes, well, I wouldn't touch the stuff, too much liability. I'm thinking, here's a man in the foreclosure business, and he wouldn't touch real estate. So there's all these different attitudes, and there's a lot of gray in the law. And so when I tell people, you know, if your attorney doesn't see eye to eye with what you're doing, talk to some other attorneys, and then you're not just looking for a yes man or someone will just take your money, but you need to find someone that says, yeah, we can do this. Okay, tell me why we can do it, because I have these other people telling me we can't, and tell me how you're going to defend me if it comes up. I mean, explain to me, because I don't just want someone just to say, yeah, so they can get my check. I mean, I need to feel like they got a reason how they're going to defend me. And a lot of that was going on. Dodd-Frank just came out because it's 2,500 pages. Nobody really knew what it said,
Right. Well, and let's go back to my statement a while ago of staying in your lane. The other thing and it's a very well-deserved knock on attorneys. What we forget about is the legal part of a transaction. Or a business. There's a long formula for success of that business. And there's only a very small part of that relates to legal. And typically the legal advice is not whether or not you do it, it's just the risk associated with doing it. And what attorneys sometimes often do is they think that they need to replace the business counsel or business wisdom of their clients. That's not our role. Our role is to answer the questions that our business clients have asked us about and to say we don't know if we don't know. But it's certainly not to replace the business decisions of our clients. I go to several board meetings, and often one of the board, the chairman of the board will say, well, Johnny, what do you think on this issue? And my answer is typically, well, listen, I can answer that question if you want me to, but you're surrounded by very smart businessmen, and that's not my role here. And so be careful about finding attorneys who think that they are smarter in your business than you are.
Yeah, and sometimes it pays to just pick a specialist. I mean, you can't go up to a general practitioner doctor and say, I need you to do a heart surgery. He's a doctor, but that doesn't make him qualified to do heart surgery. It's a specialization, and you got to find those people
exactly
that are really tuned into what you do. And somewhere there's an attorney that's just super passionate about whatever it is you're into. Somewhere there's an attorney that's all he does, or that's what he's done for years, and he can tell you more about it and knows the case law and knows everything. But I also like an attorney that says, I don't know, but I can find the answer. Let me go see the case law, or let me go find out what's been going on the last couple of years. What are the rulings on this? Because a lot of things are gray especially when you don't have any rulings yet. When the law just comes out, you don't have any rulings,
Well, two comments on that, if I may, Mitch. First of all, I think that what's perhaps even more important is an attorney who cares. I had a situation with a family that I represented for years, and I won't go into the facts, but I had a younger attorney that came to me and said, there's just no law to do what they need to do. And because of the situation there, I was not going to go to the client and tell them that. So we found a way to accomplish what they needed to accomplish. And I had a second point, but I forgot what the second point was.
Well, no, that's fine, because I agree 100%. When I have students on the higher levels, and they're doing business in a different state, I don't know the laws of that state. So I'll get on counsel with them and say, look, what time can I speak to you and your lawyer on a 3-way call so I can explain exactly what we want to do? And of course, the student can't explain it like I can because I've been doing it 20 years. So I'm making sure the attorney understands exactly what we want to do. Now, is the best way to do this in North Carolina? Is it a contract for deed? I mean, how long is the foreclosure process? Can you actually even get a person out of a house within a reasonable amount of time in your state? Tell me all this stuff. Is a contract for deed considered a sale, or like in Ohio, is it, the first 5 years, it's just an eviction, or unless they've reduced the principal balance by 25%. What are we up against here? How can we figure out this business? And so I just use them to tell me how to do it where you're from. How are they doing it there? Sometimes the answer is, don't want to do it here.
Well, and you're exactly right. I mean, I've got a client currently that's a very successful business. We're buying 3 stores, retail stores in Colorado. because I know their business. They want me to handle it, but I've got local counsel. I hired Colorado counsel because I need their help to tell me what there is. Contract for deed. In Texas, you don't buy residential property and fund it through a contract for deed. That's a real mistake. And I had to clean up a mess for an attorney, the really high-level attorney here in Austin that just didn't know real estate well enough. He did a contract for deed. We got a real problem. And if you haven't given the multitude of notices that are required by the Texas legislature, so you're right. I mean, find people that know what they're doing.
I've had people tell me, even like real estate, well, contract for deeds illegal in Texas. It's not illegal. It's just the reporting requirements are pretty stiff, and if you miss the mark, you could be in trouble. You can do
exactly.
it all. You just better know what the year-end reporting is and how you got to handle it, because you only got 30 days to handle it every year, and you need to know that. But the way I look at that is, the foreclosure process is so good in Texas, or good enough, that you don't need to do that. Just go ahead and put them on and go through the foreclosure. But in other states, it's not like that. I mean, you can't in Florida. If a seller finance buyer wants to lawyer up, it could be 6 years before you get them out of there. Judicial foreclosure, whole different thing. So
exactly, yeah, I couldn't agree more with everything you said.
So, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I and my partner in my office say, run this by the attorney real quick, make sure we're not doing, like, we make any changes or we see anything that happened in a contract. Contracts are living documents to us. They're always improving to try to shield us from the next thing that we didn't see coming. You know what I mean? Like, how do you write that into the thing so that can't happen again? Or someone has a request, and be careful about just changing legal documents without the counsel, because you don't know what you don't know.
Well, and I'm thinking back of an earlier comment that you said, and you said, and I'm going to tie it with your current comment. You said, I'm a bottom line guy. And that's what real estate people are. And the problem for attorneys is we don't provide anything very sexy. For the real estate developer, we don't provide the plans. We don't provide the architecture. But what we do provide is we provide advice on changes to contracts, whether or not you should use a contract for deed for residential in Texas. What does that mean? How does that happen? But we've got to find a way. One thing that I want to do is because of the compensation system we use, Mitch, in the state of Texas, or all attorneys, the hourly fee, we discourage clients from calling. You think about picking up the phone, you think, I'm on the phone with them for 6 minutes, I get a bill for $350. Do I really need to contact that attorney? And so we need to find a way to encourage communications with our clients. And I want to change the paradigm. And I don't know exactly how we're going to do that, but I'm looking forward to trying. But good for you for thinking that that's important enough, because it's a lot of times, if a client would have called me, we could have created, for instance, if that client would have contacted me about the contract for deed, I could have said exactly what you said. Sure, we can do it, but you're going to have lots of reporting requirements, and here's what they are. Why don't you instead just finance it and transfer it to them, get a deed of trust, and we would have saved them thousands, tens of thousands of dollars.
My understanding,
I agree with you.
If you fail to report right, it's like $200 a day to the value of the property or something. I mean, the reason why people are scared of contract for deeds is because the penalty is really stiff. It's like really stiff. So
yeah, the legislature wanted to protect the purchasers who had paid lots of money, and then the pendulum swings in the Texas legislature. Things go too far. And so, but a little advice can save a lot of money. But I get it. I know why people are discouraged from calling attorneys. I completely understand it.
What just crossed my mind, I like to throw it out there. I'm involved with Texas100.org, and we go up there to lobby for common sense real estate laws all the time. And we're kind of teamed up with the Seller Finance Coalition, but it's not just we go up there to even to lobby or to confront unreasonable laws or laws that they're discussing right now, so that we can get reasonable legislation. Sometimes we may be up there fighting for something that doesn't even affect us as seller financiers, but if they start getting unreasonable laws, it starts to have a momentum, and they start making laws that they really don't know sometimes what they're doing. I mean, we're talking to Ted Cruz about seller financing. I said, if you guys think about it, if you make it too hard on the seller financiers, the inner city is going to die, because who's going to buy these $30,000 and $40,000 and $50,000 dilapidated crack houses and go out there if you're going to make them have to be such a high level that no one wants to do it? Then these crack houses are never going to get bought. And he's like, we never thought about that. And I said, well, yeah, because that's not what you do, but that's why we're here. Can we loosen up a little bit?
And I don't know exactly when this podcast may run, so this may not be timely. But I mean, right now we have legislators and regulators who are saying we need to help tenants, and we need to help them not lose their homes. And listen, nobody really can disagree with that. But what about the financier who bought that house, who has to make monthly payments?
Or the landlord.
And what happens when January comes along, and that tenant, let's just, because I'm not that great with math, let's assume $500 a month. That tenant, instead of owing $500 a month, all of a sudden owes $6,000. And so I'm glad we have people like you in the business who go talk to legislators and regulators, because they often don't understand the consequences of what they're doing. We're going to live that in the next couple of months in the landlord-tenant arena, and with mortgages as well.
Well, we just got that letter like 5 days ago. They just suspended foreclosures indefinitely. Like, what? Why do they have the right to move the burden to another human being? I mean, you know what I mean? The contract was signed. It was clear. I don't like that anyone's struggling, but why? You didn't solve anything. You just moved the problem to another man.
Well, if you're going to solve the problem, you've got to think about this, how far that problem is going to. What other problems are you creating? What are the other problems that you're creating? And hopefully there's got to be some type of resolution to that soon, because it's going to create problems for the tenants. It's going to create problems for the landlords. It's going to create problems for the financiers. And that there's going to have to be some solutions to that. But that exactly is a great example of what you're talking about the need to be interacting with with legislators and regulators, because they don't really think about what they're thinking about is what's politically expedient, not really what the impact of that political decision may be.
Well, they may also be thinking there's a lot more tenants than there are apartment owners, and we need the votes. So I
understand.
All the tenants, well, okay. There's a saying in that business, as far as like Texas100.org goes, that we repeat all the time, talking to new investors, saying you need to get involved, you need to become a member, you need to start seeing what they're just talking about doing up there. It'll scare the living hell out of you if and if you don't get organized. And they may say, well, I don't rent properties, I own or finance your properties. I said, yeah, but if we don't get a coalition together today, there will be you tomorrow. And then you won't have an organization to fight your problem. We have to go up there and try to negotiate for all the different strategies to let them know that, there's some people out here that really know about this business, and you're not thinking about a few things. This is unreasonable, or it doesn't make sense for certain reasons. But the saying is that if you're not at the table, you're on the table.
Right. I get it.
You're on the table. They're dividing you up. So.
Well, and we got a different world now. I was in Washington, worked in Washington back in the Reagan Tip O'Neill days. And they fought tooth and nail during the day, but we would walk out of that congressional office building, the police would be everywhere, and we always knew what was happening. President Reagan was there having whiskey with Tip O'Neill. It's not like that anymore. It's a tough environment, and so it's even more important, frankly, to be involved now because they don't get along.
Yeah. So what is your favorite kind of customer? I mean, when you're right in the zone where you're supposed to be, what kind of customer do you have? What kind of
my favorite? I'm sorry, say again.
Called a client in your business. What's
yeah.
a client?
Well, listen, customer client, it's the same thing. Listen, I've been at this long enough. What I understand, Mitch, is the greatest client is the long client, is the one that's in for the long haul, the one that has hired me long enough that I know what Mitch does. I know what Mitch is interested in. I know what he doesn't like. I know what his business is because I've gone out and I've looked at his business. I've helped him with his contract. I know when Mitch calls what he is interested in doing and what he's not doing. And frankly, if you go back to the history of the practice of law, that's what it was like. We were counselors. And we've got away from that and become hired guns. And I don't like that. And so my favorite client, and I've been extremely blessed with clients who have been with me for years and years and years. So when they call and they're buying stores in Colorado, they're from Texas, but they make one call and they know that I'm like the doctor internist. If it's a heart problem, listen, I'll help them because I know what they want, and I'll guide the heart surgeon. But I know to call in the heart surgeon. So it's long. It's probably a different answer than what you expected, but it's the absolute truth. Relationships, loyalty, love. Frankly, caring, being brokenhearted. If your client doesn't want to use you anymore, if you're not brokenhearted by that, you don't have a strong enough relationship and desire to represent that client.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and give out a link to the show notes here, and then your people, Johnny, will get with my people, and we're gonna put anything you want over there in the show notes. Okay, your contact information, your address, whatever it is you want in there to say or do, and your contact information. So go to 1000houses.com/Johnny Merritt, and that's Merritt. Is that right?
That's right, Mitch.
Make sure. Johnny, JOHNNY, Merritt, MERRITT, and you're in Austin. Who knows?
Yeah.
The only reason I like to run it through the show notes is you'll figure out that it came from this podcast, and you might be amazed at how many people might call, over the time, and you never know, it might be nothing, and then one month, because these podcasts are evergreen, and people go through them.
Well,
and you never know, and maybe someone needs exactly the counsel that you have.
One thing that I have learned from this pandemic, and I've learned lots of things, but my assistant, who's been with me for years, who's incredible, walked in about 3 weeks ago, and her husband had been relocated from Austin, Texas to Boise. And so my assistant is now working for me from Boise, Idaho. And I told her husband, Brian, I said, Brian, I'm real happy for you, kind of. And I meant every word that I said. But the point is, I appreciate having the opportunity to be on the podcast, because I'm going to limit my practice mostly to Texas, obviously, except when I have an existing client going elsewhere. But I'm not limited to Austin or Amarillo or Fort Worth. It's amazing what we can do throughout the state of Texas now. And particularly if you have the attitude that I do, listen, if I need local counsel, I'm getting local counsel. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to talk to you.
Well, it's been a pleasure. You ever get to San Antonio?
I'm amazed. I love San Antonio. I'm amazed. I live 1.5 hours from San Antonio. Yes, we get to San Antonio. In fact, I bought a cowboy hat. I forgot what's the name. There's a famous
Texas Hatters
country in downtown. I went and bought a black cowboy hat about several months ago. So we love San Antonio. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a long-time guitar picker troubadour named Mata down there, Billy Mata, and he's been at that store for a long time. I love to go to that place and a hat's of. You think you're just going to go in and buy a hat? It's not that simple. There's 1,000 different styles, and there's only one that's right for you, and you got to figure out what it is, and it's not easy.
Well, and for your listeners that if they happen to see this, I hope that they understand that I know it's October, and I wasn't planning on a hat. And so, although it's October and I'm wearing a straw hat, that's only because I didn't have a chance to wear the right hat this month. So please forgive me and not judge me based on my hat right now.
Yeah. And then the other thing is he's his own man. He wears his own kind of hat anytime he wants to. So it doesn't matter what hat he wears. If that's his hat, just don't knock it off his head.
Well, I tell you, my dad was born in 1916, and there's lots of rules about wearing a hat. And so you got to be careful.
I appreciate you being on the call. Everybody go to 1000houses.com/Johnny Merritt, JOHNNY Merritt, MERRITT. And if you want to just have a counsel, tell him what you're about, what you're into. And if it's a good fit, I'm sure he'll impress you. And if it's not right, I'm sure he'll advise you to find a better fit someplace else, and maybe he can even help you get there. But I get the sincere feeling from Johnny here that if he can't do you a good job, he's going to try to direct you someplace that will. So am I correct?
Mitch, thank you so much. Yes, sir. Mitch, thank you so much. Again, I'm just honored to be on your show, and thank you for giving me the chance to learn from you.
Well, I appreciate it. This is Mitch Stephen with the 1000houses.com podcast. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. Please check out taxfreefuture.com, the sponsor of the show. If you don't have a self-directed IRA or 401k or health plan or educational plan, and you would like to have one, there's the place to go. But more important than that, there is about 37 little video vignettes that can teach you a lot about what self-directed, tax-deferred, or tax-free investment vehicles can do for you. It is amazing what they can do for you. And if you don't know about it, you're missing a huge tool in your tool belt. So please check out taxfreefuture.com. And I think we're out of here. Will you stay tuned after the show? I want to talk to you a little bit, so don't hang up on me, okay?
Okay, great.
All right, we're out of here, boys and girls.